And is all the programming done strictly at the schools and after school?
It can be
Or it could be,
done any, yeah, it can be done anywhere. We base the franchise region off how many schools
hmm
are in that area and those associated zip codes. But you can do this program anywhere. You can do it with any group. It's really, but schools are an easy they're an easy place to go
hmm
because so many schools now, especially, not only the private schools that often have very sophisticated before and after school programming, but public schools as well have that need. And then we also do like camps when kids are on spring, the schools on spring break or winter break. We do camps for the parents, so that the kids, the parents still have to work, so the kids have somewhere to go.
Sure, but there's no brick and mortar franchise location.
There, you know what? We have a couple who do. You can. In fact, one of we have a retired physician down in Mississippi, and his wife was a teacher, and they wanted to use their his office. He had a great office with a conference room, and he was starting to wind down from practice, so they run classes there.
Oh, wow.
Several of our international have brick and mortar. I had a brick and mortar for several years. And honestly, it's I've now just moved it into, we do run classes at our corporate headquarters. We have a really great space because I use it a lot for testing for focus groups. So, when we're trying new programming, but we run programs up there as well. So you can, the problem with brick and mortar, it is hard. That means a parent has to pick them up at school and
Sure.
get them to another place. So we found it was almost easier just to be able to just go to the kids. And
hmm
that's the other thing we have done is that the supplies, we have a great warehouse. Dave Albers runs our warehouse. He's amazing. And everything is pre-packed. So class one, everything for 12 kids in a bag. And so when we will ship directly to the instructor just pulls that out. And then they have supplies that are kind of those supplies that are those we use in a lot of different classes that use over and over again. And it's in their bag, so they can just carry it in their bag, and they are, ready to go. And so, because that's the other thing I found when I was running this myself before I formed the official little medical school, I was spending so much time running around getting supplies, and it was expensive.
hmm
This way I can buy 10, 20, 50,000 items at a time and then share those cost savings with the franchisees when we put together these kits.
Oh, that's smart. And just makes it the learning curve for the franchisee, it makes it so much easier.
Oh, it does. And like I said, we have, we really try to get supplies that are really beautiful, that are branded, that they look great. And
hmm
and that's important for, we want things that really reflect the brand positively.
Sweet. So, just for the audience, just some of the numbers I want to share. So, you founded the company in 1999, I understand. You have 48 franchise locations in 14 states, plus the three
Mhm.
company owned locations in Denver, Orlando, right? And South Illinois.
Yes, yeah.
And, but you franchised in 2015. So, you had been doing this like 16 years, or at least from the time you founded the concept. It was 16 years until you franchised. What was the defining moment for you, Mary, that franchising
Yeah.
even entered your mind? You decided we're doing this. We're going to franchise this concept.
Well, it was really funny because, I actually wrote this with the original Little Medical School when I was finishing up my MBA in 1999 as a class project. And it was just fun. And, I thought it was a great way that do some volunteering while I was, when my kids were, little. And so I just really was playing around with it. And I really spent probably the first, from 2000 to about 2010, just writing fun things. Like people would call me and say, "Hey, there's an asthma camp for these kids with
hmm
asthma. Do you have anything?" And I'm like, "Oh, that would be fun if we did this." And so I would just come up with fun things to do. And then I was sitting with the CEO of one of the large physician groups in town at a holiday party. We were at a table and we're just chit chatting, and And I, was just telling him, I have this concept little medical school, and this is what I do. And I had a little logo that, with the schoolhouse and the stethoscope that I had someone draw out for me, and I showed it to him, and he just looks at it and he's like, I've never seen anything like this before. And I'm like,
Right.
okay. And so we actually, it's like, why don't we partner together? And they were actually very into pediatric orthopedics. So they did a lot of community outreach with kids. And so, we just, we got in a room, and we got a list of all the schools in the St. Louis area. And there's like four of us, and we just start calling. And all of a sudden we had like 50 schools that said yes. And we were like,
Oh,
what? And it's like,
oh my.
I don't even have a summer camp, and they want this, this school wants a summer camp. And so there was this very quick, just we've got programming, we can do this. And then my COO, my long-term COO, Jennifer Grifford, who's been with me for 2012. We honestly had a little supply box, or like a supply closet, where we had all these little boxes. And back then, like we would just have this huge box that we would give to the instructors to carry in. And I remember I was carrying one of those into my oldest daughter's grade school, and she looks at me and she goes, oh my God. She goes, please do not tell anybody this is your program. This is so embarrassing, because you have this huge box. And she's changed her mind now. So she's in public relations now. So she now realizes, the potential there.
Oh yeah.
But that's now where that's where we had to learn. It's like, you can't ship a big bucket, that we need for our programs across the country. That's expensive, and it's not good to have an instructor carrying that in. So
Sure.
now we have these beautiful collapsible buckets that are branded, so an instructor can just slip it into their bag. And Jen was the genius behind that, of really figuring out, how do you make this portable, because that really is the key. You have to be able to go to the kids.
Right.
So then we spent those next 4 or 5 years to really trying to figure out, how do you make this program work. And then I start getting calls from people in Texas and Florida saying, hey, my kid was in St. Louis visiting relatives. They went to this little medical school camp. We want to know when are you running any in our area?
Is that not the
And
most amazing feeling?
it was, well, and it was funny, because I guess, and I didn't realize this, but a lot of families come to St. Louis for vacation. And, there's a lot of great things in this
Sure.
town, but we had a lot of kids out of state enrolling in our St. Louis programs. And it just made
Wow.
such an impact. I was really surprised. And so that's when I kind of sat back, and it's like, okay, how do you expand this? How do you, there has to be people in the community and communities across the country who like to teach kids. They want to have a positive impact. They don't have to be a medical person, because that's the other thing. We've set this up that a college student can teach this. And that's really important. We have great teacher guides. As long as you have a good grasp of high school science, you can teach this. That's when we went with the franchising, and I found gentleman, Dave Waldman, the franchise maker in San Diego.
Okay.
Had a long conversation with him, and he said, I think we should do this. He goes, I think this will work. So he was fantastic. He spent hours with me making sure that I understood that franchise disclosure document backwards and forwards.
Good for
Because he
you.
said that is critical. And no, that
Absolutely.
was, and I remember at the time thinking, I mean, it seemed like a lot of time that was devoted to this, but I am so grateful that Dave made me sit down and do it, because it does, you have to, if you're going to be a franchisor, you have to understand that agreement. And what I also find is that a lot of times franchisees come in and they don't always understand what it means to be a franchisee. So people come in and say, well, I don't like the way this logo looks. I want to change it this way for my, and it's like, no, this is it. And I'll say, originally I went to, when we first launched, I was really thinking doctors, would be a really good target, because there's a lot of physicians who want to get out of medicine, which is, it just, there are a lot of people saying
Sure.
I'm ready to change careers.
Yeah.
And so I went to this conference, and we had probably 10 people saying, we want to buy this right now. This is what we want. And so the one thing though that's hard is that you have to, and this is the other lesson I've learned, is that when you sell franchisees, and when you award franchises, you really have to make sure that people understand the commitment and understand that it can't just be an hour or two on the weekends. It really, you have to hire people to run it for you if you are going to continue to do your practice or, your full-time job. So we've learned a lot along the way. But we have some fantastic franchisees who really do a great job of, getting this just everywhere in their regions. And it's really designed so we really want the franchisees to focus on making the sales, making the contracts, and getting this to as many kids. And then it's really turnkey. So you just get the instructors to the classrooms or to the kids, wherever they are, and everything is there for them to be able to run this.
Who's your ideal franchise owner then?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know you mentioned you're in pharmaceuticals.
I was back in the 90s, yes.
Well, yes, but you know what? I think people who are former pharmaceutical reps are fantastic, because they understand medicine, they understand sales, and they understand how to put together a program and present it. I have some fantastic teachers who really are business-minded and are very good at running the program and using their network. I've had several small business owners, one in IT, who wanted his kids to be pre-med and go to med school, and actually bought the franchise for that, because he wanted his kids to work it.
Okay.
But he's been great. He's our first franchisee, still with us in San Francisco. Just renewed him, and he has done a really good job out there. So, it's funny, and it's not to go after doctors, because people say doctors are not, the whole average doctors are not good business people. But I do think while you would think a doctor or nurse might be the best, I have had some very, very good ones, but I do think it's sometimes having somebody who's on the outskirts of medicine,
yes,
but understands business and how to, you're really putting on a party, is the way I look at it.
Right.
You got to get the people there, you got to get the instructor, you got to get the supplies, and then everything's there then for them to run it.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.